Our next speaker will speak about how new forms of the economy are created and managed, the road to sustainability. He holds master's degrees in management and leadership and a PhD in Arab and Islamic affairs. Now I know the reason why you speak Arabic. And consulted with the clients in more than 30 countries. Please welcome with me to the stage Dr. Corrie Block.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How is everybody today? You all right? We're talking about the economy, and I'm so excited because it's like a big puzzle. It's a social game. The economy is something that we build to play in. So as a society, as a company, as a family, as a country, economics is something that we use to organize ourselves and to give us a fair play field for all of us to do well in our lives. So I'm really excited. I'm a professor of strategy. I'm a consultant in strategy. And so today I want to introduce a few strategic ideas that you can use to increase and improve the economic diversification of Bahrain or your company or your family or your country, wherever it is that you come from. Economic diversity I define as the variety of economic entities, including the products and services that are produced and or consumed by a particular economy, as well as its public and private sector organizations and the individual people that comprise them. And I want to go back down to the individual people because those are the players that we need to empower, and we as a country create the rules in which they play. This is the game of economics. So the metrics of diversity when it comes to the economy, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because my talk is going to be followed by James Chung, and he's going to bring a lot more value to this slide than I ever could. But employment opportunities and scope and tier, industry and sector mix, these are the oil and non-oil sectors that we just discussed with Dr. Yarmo. The variety of economically engaged skill sets, the diversity of the people economically engaged, the variety in revenue and resource streams, and the variety in products and services offered. These are the metrics by which we measure the diversity of an economy. And just to give you a macro example, you'll get it from Wichita, Kansas in the next speech. And as a micro example, I want to introduce you to my family. This lovely lady here, we've been married 22 years. Our daughter's name is Grace. She's 12 years old, and that handsome guy on the left, that's my son. His name is Gabriel. And Gabriel wasn't satisfied a year ago with his economic diversity because he only had one income stream, and that was an endowment from Dad every month. So I challenged him. I said, go out and make your own economy. There's lots of money in the market. Go find it. And so he did. So he created 3 businesses for himself. The first one was buying candy at the local grocery store, which he took to the school and sold at a profit. The second one was doing homework for his fellow classmates for a fee. He did his classmates' homework. And the third one is he figured out that if he played video games online in a certain online environment, an audience would form and pay him so they could watch him play these video games. And for those of you who didn't catch it, that's general trade, professional services, and media and entertainment. That's diversified economy. And I want us to recognize, as we talk about people and human resources and human capital, that every single individual actor in an economy is their own economy. We are all economic actors. And we act inside an environment in which we have clear, hopefully clear and fair rules by which we play this economic game. And this is the regulatory environment that encourages fair play and economic diversity. Fair play competition, of course, security and supply. Most of us know by now that we are 3 square meals away from total social breakdown because of just-in-time inventory and the fact that we only have a certain amount of groceries in the grocery store, so if things go really badly, it can go really badly really quickly. So the government really needs to provide incredible supply and incredible security. Enforceability of contracts, that was a big issue when I lived in Yemen with my family for 5 years, and enforceability of contracts was the #1 inhibitor of foreign direct investment in Yemen, was that they weren't sure that their contracts would be enforced. Ease of registration is for new companies. Protection of intellectual property, of course, is a massive challenge for governments all over the world, and the transparent tendering processes. These are the regulatory environment. And again, I don't want to spend a lot of time here because I do want to get to more important things, which I think you're going to find better in terms of your applicability to your businesses, which are the sustainability of diversity principles. Innovation, leadership, transparency, sharing, regionalization, audacity, and happiness. And this is where I'm going to spend the rest of my time. Number one, innovation. Law follows the actions of people. It does not lead. This was said by Gregory Nemitz, and most of you will not know who this is, but Gregory Nemitz in March of 2000 declared ownership of an asteroid floating in near-Earth orbit called Eros 433. There's a picture of the asteroid there. It's comprised of a number of minerals and precious metals, and it's estimated to be worth some 492 quadrillion US dollars. That's 492 and 15 zeros. That's the estimated value of this rock floating in space. Of course, he has no way to plant a flag on it, and he has no way to mine it, but he declared ownership of it anyway, and no government in the world would recognize his claim. But he did spark a very interesting conversation, and that conversation has slowly led us to the place where space travel is now privatized through SpaceX in the US, and Luxembourg, as of July of this year, is the very first country in the world that will award ownership rights to a company that mines outside of the planet. The regulatory bodies of the world do react when innovation happens, and sometimes innovation is incredibly, well, let's say, out of this world. In the world where we have ingredients that lead to innovation, I like to use South Korea as an example when I study companies and how they produce their innovations and how they create more innovative streams of revenue. South Korea is a very good model because they're very family firm dense, like our region here. They're very family firm dense, and they have a very high R&D intensity. That is investment in research and development as a percentage of assets. So when we look at the South Korea model, there's a study by Mina and Smythe that provides some really interesting numbers, and you don't have to read the whole study. I'm going to condense it down for you. 3 major principles apply when they're looking at companies and why those companies become innovative or why they have such high intensity investments in research and development. And those are cooperative networks of companies. So the way it works in South Korea is groups of companies or family companies that have greater synergy between those companies within the group have a higher investment in R&D. Here that translates the same. Companies that have greater synergy between themselves or between other companies and their networks, whether it's right down to the incubator or right up to a family group of companies, those companies that have better synergy between the different bodies have higher investment in R&D and therefore are more innovative. Also, pay for talent. Pay for talent is something that, I mean, you'll hear it here and there, but really on the executive branch, this is more pronounced than on the labor branch, but in executives and even among standalone companies, you'll find that pay for talent is a much stronger applied principle when it comes to encouraging innovation. Innovation is more encouraged in companies that pay for talent on the executive level, especially as standalone, rather than in a group of companies. And the third principle is access to financing. This is a no-brainer. If you build a great engine and you don't have fuel, it's not going to run. But the flip side of that same coin is the same study shows that access to too much financing is really an inhibitor of innovation. So if you want to innovate in your company, you can encourage these policies. You can pay for talent on the executive branch. You can network very, very well with other companies, and you can limit your degree of financial leverage. Of course, the result of higher innovation or higher R&D intensity is an increase in stock value. This is the same study that showed this output. Again, you don't need the charts and graphs. I can give you all of that stuff by email if you like later. But principle number 2 is leadership. Strength lies in differences, not in similarities. That's by Stephen Covey, and I truly believe that. You've heard John Maxwell say that a leader without followers is just a guy taking a walk. You heard that? Well, I believe in that. I believe that leadership really is a commitment to a community. That community creates a leader by choosing to follow. Leadership is a follower-led sport. And when I talk about leadership in a diverse economy, I'm talking specifically about diversity of leadership. And I can't tell you, I sit on 4 different boards right now, and I consult for a number of different companies. And I can't tell you, I am so disappointed every time I enter a new boardroom to find exactly the same picture as I find in other parts of the world. There's a group of 8 people, all very much alike. Same religion, same tradition, same language, same background. Sometimes went to the same school, sometimes attend the same events in the evening, sometimes cheer for the same sports teams. And the more alike they are, the greater they feel that the board is doing because they agree with each other all the time. Well, of course they agree with each other all of the time. They have the same worldview. But what that does is it limits the amount of available information that the board can process in order to make a good quality decision. So decision-making quality goes down. And now I've found this in my 20 years of research and consulting to be true, that a non-diverse board makes poorer quality decisions almost consistently. But you don't have to take my word for it. You could trust, let's say, McKinsey. Their studies show that diverse boards of directors result in significantly higher earnings. Or the US National Academy of Sciences says that diverse problem solvers are more effective, hands down, are more effective, a diverse group of problem solvers than a high ability group of problem solvers. Or we can listen to Forbes. Workforce diversity leads to innovation and business growth. These are statistically upheld truths of diversity in companies. So as we talk about the diversity of the economy in Bahrain or in your company or in your country, we must also be welcoming, or not just welcoming, we have to be seeking of the diversity in leadership that will lead to more innovative thinking, better quality of input-seeking behavior, better quality of decision-making behavior. And that is what is going to give us an edge as we build our individual economies, whether family, business, or country or group of companies. Transparency is number 3. Transparency, I want to make very clear to you, this is not a fad, this is not just a trend, this is gravity. Transparency is coming, it is here, it is not going away, and it will consistently force companies, governments, people into greater and greater degrees of transparency. I had a mentor once tell me, don't live a life that can't be lived on CNN. And that's a great principle. In fact, I don't have any secrets. There's nothing in my life, personally as a leader, there's nothing in my life that I'm the only person who knows it. Somebody else knows every secret that I've ever had. And that kind of transparency is freedom. Now, that's not always good from a competitive business standpoint, but you have to recognize that the trend is in that direction. Now, negative influences on transparency, of course, industrial espionage, whistleblowers, leaks, WikiLeaks is a great example of that. But there are positive drivers of transparency as well. Regulated disclosures, empowered anti-corruption bodies, personal broadcasting. Personal broadcasting is a new thing. It's a millennial act. So people all over the world are now broadcasting what they've had for lunch because they feel that it's important and valuable to someone else. But what that comes from is the value of allowing other people to see your life. And that is going to filter more and more into the way that businesses and companies and countries are run as those people with those values become authoritative leaders in those organizations. Open source, I'll give you a couple of examples on the next slide, and of course blockchain. Blockchain is, again, not a fad. It is absolutely disruptive. It is going to change the way that a lot of things are done. And for those of you who don't know how blockchain works, just think about it as the decentralization of the most valuable currency on the planet, which is trust. The most valuable currency is trust. And now we have a way to decentralize it through blockchain. So imagine, in the future, the entire notary industry is going to be decimated by the fact that there's no need to verify who signed a document, and there's no need to verify how authoritative that document is. It's known, it's public, it's on the public ledger, and everybody has the public ledger. Transparency has driven open source technologies, which most of you are carrying around in your pockets right now. Linux was the first open source operating system, and it sits behind 85% of all mobile phones on the planet, including those by Android, including my own mobile phone. You're benefiting from that open source technology. Tesla is a great example. In 2014, Elon Musk announced that Tesla was going to give up all of their rights to all of their patents just to increase the body of knowledge and the research and the development of the electrical car industry. And that is an amazing thing to give away to the rest of the world. Firefox, statistically, most of you don't use Firefox as a browser, but you're very happy that it exists because Firefox is an open source browser, which means millions of developers all over the world are consistently trying to make it better and faster and stronger. And large companies like Google for Chrome, Microsoft for Edge, or Apple for Safari have to compete with that. And how do you compete when you have 1 million people in development on your competitor's team? They have to be better. They have to be stronger because it's open source. GIS, again, most of you are carrying this in your pockets. The Geographical Information System was started in 1978 in the United States. It was originally called MOS, and it is the open source foundation upon which all of your GPS is built. So for those of you who used a GPS map like Google in order to find your way here today, GIS, open source technology, is what brought you here. WordPress sits behind 27% of the World Wide Web. It has 30,000 different plugins. And because of its open source nature, developers all over the world can contribute to the betterment of that system. And almost all of my websites that I work on or contribute to, all of those that are in the hands of my clients, they're WordPress. Because it's easy, because it's fast, because there's 1 million developers in the world working on making it better and faster. For me, what an amazing thing. Open source is driving the new economy. And so the better you can get into that, the better you can take advantage of those that are providing open source technologies, or you yourself offering open source technologies upon which other developers can develop, that's going to help you. The next trend, sharing. Sharing is one of my 2 core values. I have sharing and curiosity. Those are my 2 core values. But sharing is driving a good deal of, well, disruptive and kind of disconcerting industries. Take, for example, Airbnb. Airbnb doesn't own a single hotel, but they are the largest provider of accommodation in the world. Okay? So the problem is, when it comes into a country like the UAE, it was introduced into the UAE a few years ago, how do you regulate that? Who's monitoring whether the bed sheets or the kitchen are up to health and safety standards? How is a government supposed to react when it's direct consumer-to-consumer sales through a platform that isn't housed in the UAE? It's somewhere else. And how do you manage that? And it's difficult for governments to react with proper and empowering regulation when something disruptive like that enters the market. Alhamdulillah, it's possible. It can be done. As of spring of last year, Airbnb is now regulated and it's part of the economy. Same with Uber. Uber came in and was just as disruptive, but you can't stop it, because how do you prevent people from renting their own cars out to other people for rides? But then who's monitoring health and safety standards? How do we tax that? So again, from a regulatory standpoint, the governments of the world are reactive. They react to innovations that happen in the market, and the better they can get at being reactive in an empowering way, the more functional that government will be as it enters a new and diversified economy. Bitcoin is another great example. Bitcoin, my grandfather has a government pension. He's lived in Canada his whole life, has a government pension, very confident in the government. My dad is not so confident in the government, so he has a corporate pension. He worked for the same company for 30 years. He's retired, he has a corporate pension, he trusts that. Me, I've worked for 100 different companies in the last 20 years. I don't have a corporate pension, I don't live in Canada, so I don't have a government pension, but what I do have is I have stocks, I have investments. That's where I put my trust. Now my son, he was young during the 2008 crisis. He understands how quickly a bubble can burst, and he sees those bubbles building and bursting, building and bursting. And so he's going to grow up not trusting stocks, bonds, traditional investments. But you know what millennials do trust? They trust each other. 90% of millennials will make a purchasing decision based on a single piece of input from social media. And so when a millennial generation has the ability to invest in each other, by investing in a decentralized currency that's not backed by any asset, not backed by any stock, not backed by any fiat currency or any government in the world, why would they not? It's a solution for them. For me, it's a bit of a challenge. I don't really know where to put it in the economy, but governments are reacting and responding to the existence and validity of Bitcoin, which is, I don't know, it's a currency and it's not a currency. It's an asset and it's not an asset. It's very interesting, but you can use Bitcoin to purchase a vehicle at the Tesla factory right now. You can use Bitcoin to purchase an apartment in Dubai right now. It's a live currency. I'm helping one of my clients right now structure the very first Bitcoin-backed share in the UAE right now. It's yielding incredible returns, 70% ROA on transaction. That's amazing. That's an amazing new form of financial instrument. And it's part of this sharing economy. Regionalization is another trend. I don't want to spend too much time here because there's so much research done on regionalization. As it turns out, globalization from a market standpoint is somewhat of a myth. It's not holding up in the research and the academics, but what is holding up is regionalization. And by that I mean even Coca-Cola, one of the largest companies in the world with the most significantly value-held brand, is compromising on its brand to issue blue cans instead of red cans for a single event that happens in the Amazon rainforest every year, in which two competing tribes, let's say, they compete in a competition of dancing and singing. And Coca-Cola sponsors the event. It's a massive event, but what they realized was they were only selling Coca-Cola on one side of the event, and that was on the side that was the red team. On the blue team, they weren't selling any Coca-Cola. Those people were buying Pepsi because the can was blue, even though they preferred the taste of Coke. So Coca-Cola compromised on its one major core branding identity, that's red. They compromised on red to meet a regional need. Other companies like Uniglobal is a small SME here in the MENA region. They create canned flavored chicken, and it's following, again, a global trend in which tuna is becoming more expensive, so chicken is becoming more competitive, so they're introducing chicken in the same format as people are used to buying tuna in. It happened in the US about 25 years ago, and it's starting here as well. But they too, compromising on major branding guidelines and major branding values in order to introduce a regionalized product, say in Ethiopia, called dorowat. Dorowat is a particular product that in Ethiopia takes 7 hours to cook. And this company, Uniglobal, has figured out a way to put it in a can so it can be heated up and served in 7 minutes. That is innovative, but that's also regionalized. So when you're encouraging SMEs, encourage them up to have a regional expression of their particular product and service. And when you're encouraging MNEs, encourage them down, to empower down to their regionalized leaders as much as they possibly can. Audacity. Wait, no, I didn't pronounce that right. Audacity. I love Elon Musk. I'm pretty sure we're best friends. He just doesn't know it yet. I like this guy. He's so fun because you never know what he's going to say, and it's always something really weird, right? Like he says he wants to send manned missions to Mars by 2024, and you think that's ridiculous. That is the silliest thing I've ever heard, manned missions to Mars. But then he creates SpaceX, which is the first private space travel company, and then he creates the Falcon rocket, which actually goes up and lands itself, significantly reducing the cost of launches. And actually, you know what? You think after these little bits of innovation or these little bits of economy are created, maybe he can do it. Maybe it's manageable. And think of all of the other little offshoot startups and SMEs that have been birthed out of the need to push men onto Mars by 2024. Not led by any government, led by this guy. This same guy who last year at about this time was stuck in traffic in Los Angeles, and he tweeted out, "I'm really annoyed at the traffic, so I'm going to build a company that tunnels underneath Los Angeles and builds underground highways." And you think, man, that's ridiculous. That is so audacious. Why would he even say that? But the Boring Company was registered immediately, and right now, the first length of that underground highway is already completed. That's 1 year. That's what Audacity does. Very recently, again this year, he promised the South Australian government that they would have 700 megawatts of power based on his battery technology. Within 100 days of signing the contract, or it would be free. When I was a kid, we used to get a kick out of, my brother and I, we would try to time the pizza delivery guy, because we had this thing at Pizza Hut, you know, if they didn't deliver within 30 minutes, it would be free, right? So Dad would hang up the phone and he'd say, okay, pizza delivery guy's on his way, and we would time that pizza delivery guy. This is a whole other level. This takes that to the audacious place, you know. It's so encouraging for me. Like, one of the reasons I live in Dubai, I like Dubai, I enjoy this region tremendously. I've been living in the region for almost 11 years now, but I like living in Dubai because you never know what you're going to get. They do the most crazy things in Dubai. Like the Palm Islands, not one but two, because why not have two, right? The World Islands, the tallest building in the world isn't enough, so they're going to build another one that's even taller. Like, the most ridiculous things are announced regularly in my city, and I like it, because I think just how much fun those leaders must be having sitting around in Majlises thinking up things to say out loud, hoping that somebody's going to create technology or engineering that's capable of producing these things. They just know, as soon as they say it out loud, that some SME is going to go, wow, you know what? We could probably contribute to that. Some startup entrepreneur is going to go, that's exactly what I'm building my company for. That forces innovation out of the market to be audacious, to say those big goals. It forces the market to be innovative, to create new revenue streams, to create new products, to create new services, because somebody has to figure out a way to maintain the glass on the outside of a building that has never been built before. Someone's got to figure that out. Someone has to work out an efficient way of transporting water to the top of that kind of a building. And just when you think that they're done, maybe they're not quite done. Then they say things like this: driverless public transport. This is coming in January, by the way. They just announced it. Oh, and by the way, in January, there's going to be driverless public transport in Dubai. It's being done. All government on blockchain by 2020. They want paperless government. Like every piece of property in the country tokenized. Can you imagine? That is disruptive, but it creates the need for an entire economy based around blockchain and blockchain developers and software and IT that didn't exist before. And okay, so maybe some of the people at the top don't even know how to describe what blockchain is or what it does, but that doesn't negate the need that it creates in the economy for innovative solutions, for sharing, for regionalization. The world's largest solar energy project and the world's lowest carbon footprint by 2030, 100% recycling by 2030. They're going to have hotels with rainforests in them and hotels underwater. That's audacious. That's what happens when people get in a room and say, okay, what can we say next to force the economy to create things? And that's where incubators are born. Incubators are born out of the need to create an engineering solution for how to put a rainforest in the middle of the desert. And last but not least is happiness. And I chose the most dreary, ugly, gray photo I could find. Some of you may recognize this, the Hawthorne Works Factory. This is in Indiana, 1925. Between 1924 and 1932, the Hawthorne Works Factory conducted a series of experiments, research experiments. See, back then, people were thought of as machines, right? So the labor pool was a bunch of machines that you would add to other machines, and you try to make people become more efficient. You want to make them more productive. So they decided to do some experiments at Hawthorne to see whether or not changing the lighting or changing the temperature in the factory would actually increase or decrease efficiency. And what they found out was that it didn't matter at all whether the temperature was a little higher or a little lower, whether the lights were a little brighter or a little dimmer. But what mattered was somebody cared about the comfort of the people working in the factory, and that is what we call the Hawthorne effect. It was the fact that someone asked them, do you prefer it brighter? Do you prefer it warmer? It actually didn't matter whether it was warmer or colder. What mattered was that somebody cared, and that's why happiness works. Happiness is not a fad. Happiness is a real, marketable productivity trend. The happier your people are, again, I'm going to go back to the beginning. We talk about individuals in an economy as the ultimate pieces of the building block of that economy. Those individuals, their sense of happiness. Because what happens is when a person is happy in their job, happy in their life, their will starts to align to the best interests of the community which has made them feel happy. And I think the Minister of Happiness in the UAE has an amazing job, because her job is the only job that I know of that can be fulfilled just by her having the job. The fact that there is a Minister of Happiness communicates to the people that someone's thinking about what would make them happy, and therefore their will start to align to the betterment of the community that they perceive is caring about them, and therefore they will perform better, and therefore they will be more happy. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Will having a Minister of Happiness make people happier? Yes, absolutely. We've known that since the Hawthorne experiments in 1932. That is amazing. And so those are the 7 things that I wanted to share with you today in terms of principles by which you can encourage and manage greater diversity in your economy. Again, whether you're talking about your son or your daughter diversifying their economy, or your entire nation or your region, the principles are the same. Innovation, leadership, transparency, sharing, regionalization, audacity, and happiness. And these are all built on the foundation of those 2 pillars. Empowered players and clear rules make for a fun game for everyone. And don't forget that in the economic game, you are having fun. It's a game. Have fun. Thank you so much.